Welcome to Space Drift. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Let's talk about a situation that escalated into an international incident almost overnight. On September 4, 2025, U.S. Homeland Security agents raided a half-built $4.3 billion Hyundai LG battery factory in Georgia. This was the largest workplace immigration raid in U.S. history. Nearly 475 workers were detained, most of them highly skilled South Korean engineers and technicians, not just ordinary laborers. These specialists were flown in to install complex, proprietary EV battery production lines, expertise you can't find locally. The issue? Many were on business visas or visa waivers that strictly prohibit hands-on work. For years this gray area was quietly tolerated, but suddenly the rules changed. The Trump administration decided to make an example, turning a long-standing industry shortcut into a headline-grabbing crackdown. For Hyundai and LG, who had invested billions and promised American jobs, it felt like a betrayal. Their key personnel were rounded up, and the project's momentum was arrested overnight. The raid sent shockwaves through the global auto industry. It wasn't just a handful of workers, it was a full-scale operation targeting a flagship foreign investment. The message, the old way of doing business, was over. Hyundai and LG, building what was supposed to be a symbol of US-Korea cooperation, suddenly found themselves at the center of a crisis. The factory, once a beacon of the future, became a cautionary tale. The raid didn't just detain workers, it put the entire project and America's EV ambitions on hold. The timing couldn't have been worse, just days after a US-South Korea summit celebrating their alliance. Images of Korean engineers in handcuffs aired in Seoul, sparking outrage and confusion. South Korea's foreign minister rushed to Washington, demanding the release of their citizens and humane treatment. The incident quickly escalated from a labor dispute to a diplomatic crisis. President Lee Jae-myung warned that Korean companies were now reconsidering U.S. investments. The promise of a stable, welcoming business environment had evaporated overnight. The U.S. government downplayed the concerns, insisting it was simply enforcing the law. President Trump doubled down, declaring the workers were here illegally and foreign companies must hire Americans. The tough stance played well domestically but ignored the realities of global business. The gap between the two countries' perspectives was now a chasm. What was meant to be a celebration of partnership had become a test of trust. For South Koreans, this was more than a policy dispute. It was a national humiliation. News channels replayed images of their engineers in shackles, sparking fury and protests outside the U.S. Embassy in Seoul. These weren't criminals, they were the pride of Korea's tech industry, now paraded in chains. The incident was seen as a deep betrayal by a trusted ally. The protests weren't just about immigration, they were about dignity and respect. The Korean government zeroed in on the symbolism of the handcuffs, demanding their removal as a first step to restoring dignity. The legal issues were complex, but the emotional wound was simple and raw. The handcuffs became the focal point of diplomatic negotiations. For Korea, this was about more than law, it was about national pride. The images would not be forgotten soon. For Hyundai, the raid was a corporate disaster. The Georgia plant was the centerpiece of their US EV strategy, now construction ground to a halt. With their specialist team detained, the project was dead in the water. LG Energy Solution ordered all Korean employees on business visas to stop work and, if on visa waivers, to leave the country. Subcontractors scrambled to find local replacements, but the expertise was irreplaceable. The risk of continuing as before was now too high. Hyundai was forced to reconsider its entire US strategy. The raid exposed a fundamental flaw. There's no clear legal path for bringing in the foreign specialists needed for these projects. Training Americans for these roles would take years. Hyundai and LG weren't trying to cheat, they were navigating an outdated system. Now, the trust required for billion-dollar investments was shattered. The project's future, and America's reputation as a business destination, was suddenly in doubt. The crisis revealed just how fragile global supply chains can be. The American dream for Hyundai had hit a bureaucratic wall. President Trump seized the moment, using the raid to reinforce his "Hire American" message. On social media, he declared the workers illegal and told foreign companies to employ Americans. Then, in a twist, he offered to let the detained Koreans stay, if they trained their American replacements. The offer landed flat. After being detained and humiliated, few wanted to stay. Meanwhile, trade talks with South Korea teetered on the brink. The raid became a bargaining chip, poisoning negotiations over tariffs and future investments. The administration's approach was chaotic. One hand courting investment, the other arresting the people needed to make it happen. For international partners, it was a game with ever-changing rules. The uncertainty was exhausting and costly. America's message to the world was muddled at best. Given Trump's offer, nearly all the detained Korean specialists chose to leave. They refused to participate in a forced knowledge transfer after their ordeal. The South Korean government negotiated voluntary departures, avoiding a 10-year re-entry ban. A chartered Korean air flight brought them home, a symbolic evacuation from suddenly hostile territory. Even their departure was tense, but at least they weren't handcuffed on the way out. The image of them boarding as free individuals was a small victory for dignity. Their exit left a gaping skills gap in the Hyundai LG project. Years of expertise and institutional knowledge vanished overnight. The project was left in limbo, and the message to other foreign experts was clear. Proceed with caution. America had just exported its own brain drain. So, what's next for American manufacturing and foreign investment? The Hyundai plant's future, and thousands of promised U.S. jobs, are now on hold. A policy meant to protect American jobs has, ironically, delayed their creation. The episode is a warning to other global companies. U.S. political volatility is now a major risk. Washington and Seoul have agreed to create a special visa for skilled Korean professionals, a reactive fix for a long-standing problem. But new legislation takes time, and trust is harder to rebuild. South Korean firms will demand stronger guarantees before investing again. The alliance has a visible crack, and business deals will be negotiated with new caution. This crisis is a collision between populist politics and the realities of global industry. A new visa might help, but the underlying volatility remains. The half-built Hyundai plant now stands as a symbol of broken promises and uncertain futures. The world is watching to see if America can finish what it started.